Welcome to this long overdue episode of the Presbyterian Reformed Churchman. As you know, I'm Pastor George, and I have a friend with me today, Ruling Elder Rick Hutton. We're going to be talking the Gospel Reformation Network Conference that just happened last week in Orlando, Florida. That's going to be the topic. But as we do that, Rick serves as the executive director of All Saints Church in Richmond or near Richmond, Virginia. Rick, why don't you correct whatever I just said wrong?
Well, yeah, my official title is just church administrator. As you know, I refer to myself just as a full-time ruling elder deacon.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
I do all the stuff that the elders and deacons would do if they had the time to do it.
Yeah, you're like the quarterback there. Rick's been a friend for I think a couple of years now, at least a year. He's been on the show before, and you were on the host committee last year, weren't you?
Yes. Both the general host committee for overseeing all of the General Assembly activities, and then also on the worship committee. I was chairman of the worship committee for last year.
How on earth did you get on that?
Well, they uh, the admin committee approached us 2 years in advance, asking if we would be willing to, host in Richmond. So we discussed and voted at one of our presbytery meetings, and as soon as the meeting was over, I walked straight up to the moderator and said, "I want to be chairman of the worship committee."
I don't believe you for a minute. Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Look at that. Well, that shows initiative wins the day. Rick, what's those paintings behind you? We got to share about your better half.
Oh, yes. Well, actually, so my wife is second in the three generations worth of artists. And the two actually that you see behind me are my mother-in-law's work.
Oh,
And then I don't know if I can. There's one of my wife's over there.
wow.
She does some more impressionistic work like her mother as well. And then my daughters, although didn't go into art professionally, they're both quite talented as well. And so we have some of their paintings. My house looks like an art gallery.
Yes.
You know.
And it's amazingly, she seems like she might be an interior designer because, I was at your house last year and that was, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Before we get into this, how does it feel not to be on the host committee of General Assembly this year?
It feels really good. Although I am going early. I usually go down Sunday night or Monday morning, depending on where it is, just to hear what's going on in overtures. But this year I'm going down Friday night, and I'm going to help with the administrative committee, helping them get set up. And so I'm going to be volunteering Saturday and Sunday afternoon.
Wow. Are you on the permanent committee or anything like that?
No, just, went to the website, and you can go to the PCHEA website, and there's a link for volunteers, and you can sign up for all kinds of things all week long to volunteer. So I volunteered for stuff before and after the GA so I could focus, on the GA in the middle, but I felt like I needed to help out that next year's host committee.
Wow, look at that. I mean, these are nuggets that are good for our listeners. And so there's ways to, and then you know what the cool thing is, you get behind the scenes look at somewhat what's going on. Well, good stuff. Well, we are going to be talking the Gospel Reformation Network Conference that was just last week. We got to be in sunny, humid Orlando. It was beautiful down there. We were at Ligonier Ministries in St. Andrew's Chapel. So that was kind of neat to see some of what the Lord built through Dr. Sproul. And wow, I mean, that is more than a chapel, is it not?
Yes.
It's a bigger church than we have here.
The Ligonier Cathedral.
Yeah, it is a cathedral. The topic this year was called the Ruling Elder, which was new for the GRN. Of course, the GRN always has a Ruling Elder talk at their conferences. This was a great conference. The Gospel Reformation Network exists to cultivate healthy Reformed churches in the Presbyterian Church in America, and they have conferences every year and General Assembly dinners, and they really help point us to Christ as we seek to be a church in the PCA. This year in particular was based on ruling elders. That being said, there was, look, we got our new mugs too. That's the back, that's the front. Yes. We got good mugs. They're big mugs this year.
Yes.
I actually like the smaller white one because I have this little USB coffee cup warmer and it has a small base. But these definitely are hefty heftier mugs.
Yes.
You know what's neat? Again, I mentioned the Presbyterian Church in America. That's what the GRN's focus is. But there were brothers from the ARP and OPC there, and I'm not sure where else. Rick, how many of these conferences have you been to? Were you at some of the other ones, the previous
I've
ones?
been to all of the GRN conferences so far.
Okay, so if I got it right, I think this is the fourth.
Fourth, yeah, I believe that's right.
Fourth national one. They've done some smaller ones in the fall time. They took last year off, and this was the first time it was down in my old stomping grounds, because I'm from South Florida and Orlando's a neighbor to where I've been. But it really opened up the GRN to a whole new group of churches and ruling elders.
It was amazing how many people raised their hand when they asked who's here for the first time.
Yes, it was phenomenal. And you know what was cool for me, having been to also all four now? The excitement of these first time conference goers. Did you notice that?
Yes.
They were like so excited to meet some of the speakers and just to be there. And I thought, wow, that's a great thing. I know that Florida is a little more difficult to get to for most churches in the South that only had maybe a few hour drive to get to Alabama or Charlotte, where it's been in the past. And I know that was a concern, but I haven't heard what the numbers were, but it was in the multiple hundreds, I would guess. Definitely over 200, maybe over 300, I'd guess. And then John Payne said there were 300 people tuned in on the live stream.
I think it might even been more on the live stream.
Yeah, maybe. Which I was, because that's what I was kind of sharing with those guys. It's like, however many come to the conference, and thank God there was a great turnout, but the reach of this is much more than that, because people can tune in on the live stream, but also the videos exist on, obviously on YouTube. Right now they're still in the live stream format, but I know they're going to be chopping them up and be used for years to come. And when you see, some of the most watched Gospel Reformation Network videos on their site are conference talks from the past, which means those talks live on and continue to benefit the church and feed churchmen through that.
Yeah, the thing I like, I've been to a lot of different conferences over the years. Philadelphia Conference on Reformed Theology, Banner of Truth, Reform Forum, the Worship and Reformation Conference. And you mentioned that there were people from OPC and the ARP, but it really is a conference focused on the PCA. That theme that we had on the mug of cultivating healthy Reformed churches in the PCA. I enjoy meeting my Reformed and evangelical brethren outside of the PCA, but I have limited capacity for friendships and even for acquaintances. And it's nice to make those with the PCA and to be able to remember guys. There's some ruling elders from Asheville, North Carolina, that I've seen every year now at the conference. And gotten to say hello and how's it going and that sort of thing. And then the other thing I like about the GRN conference is that more than I think any other conference I've been to, they build in fellowship time. There's long breaks between talks for us to go out and talk with each other and meet. And then on the biggest day, Wednesday, it ended by 8:00. Yeah, there you go. And the Wednesday ended at 8:00. I don't know. Most conferences I go to, they push you till 9, 10, 11 at night. Till you're blurry eyed. And we had great times of fellowship Tuesday night and Wednesday night that I just don't get at most conferences I go to.
Yeah, that's right. I thought in the past it was more jam packed, and that was just my feeling. So I should really compare the schedules, but I felt like the amount of breaks and the amount of talks it was the right balance this year. I mean, we had a plenty of time for lunch, an hour and 45-minute lunch break. We had an hour and a half dinner break on Wednesday, and that was perfect. And it was really cool how that location was fantastic because there's plenty of restaurants and a lot of things close by. I like that you mentioned Tuesday night because sometimes I look at the GRN conference as it's a day and a half. It's all day Wednesday from 8 in the morning till almost 8 at night probably. The first session begins at 9. But you get there, you want to get there and socialize and all that. And then it's just a few hours on Thursday. And you think that, is that really, long enough? But it is because everybody comes in. You have to come in Tuesday. And then you're already doing dinner with guys and you're already getting together with guys. And it really is an amazing time of fellowship and learning and relationship building. What else would you say are some of the side benefits of the conference?
Well, that's just, I don't know. That's really it.
That's
The
it.
fellowship, I, met people this week that, I would probably never meet in the normal course of things.
Mm-hmm.
The director of Eastern Europe for MTW, and Steven Spinnenweber, and guys that you hear about, but I don't know. And so a ruling elder who listens to guys on podcasts is now suddenly sitting next to the guys from the podcasts. So it's a great to kind of to get to know them more personally.
It's always fun to me. I mean, I think I barely put out an episode a month now, and there's just so many good PCA and Reform podcasts that give guys access to these guys. But it was always humbling and funny to me when people come up to me like they're meeting somebody that is special, and I'm like, no, I'm just me, man. But it's cool because it does give and it does show that the podcasts like this one and the others, the Westminster Standard and Polity Matters and all of them. I'm leaving some out, a lot out, obviously. Obviously, Presbycast. I mean, it's helping the PCA in general, and I know it's helped me think through things and develop relationship. I mean, everything. It hits on all fronts. So what we wanted to do was to talk through the talks, and we're not going to go too deep into every talk. I don't know that I can remember a lot of them, honestly, because we have so many, but I do go back and watch them all. And what I would say is John Payne had mentioned this, and I was already thinking it. These talks are perfect for officer training. Would you say that? Do you think there would some of these you'd use?
Yeah, they would be quite helpful.
Yeah.
And one of the things, now here's where you can correct me if you think otherwise, but one of the things that struck me is that 95% of everything they were saying, even though it was for the ruling elder, it applied to you as a teaching elder without translation.
Yes.
And I thought they did a great job of avoiding the whole 2 office versus 3 office debate. It just wasn't even a thing. You could sit in the room with whatever opinion you had and still going, this is helpful to me.
Oh my goodness, you're absolutely right. I mean, I didn't even think of that till you said it, but it very uniquely was focused on the ruling elder. But as a teaching elder, I didn't think, yeah, these guys need to hear this. It was like, I need to hear this,
Right.
And then there is another function, and I know you would serve that too, even just because you're on staff at your church. But as a teaching elder, it's part of my job to equip the ruling elders.
Mm-hmm.
And our BCO says that. It says it specifically about church discipline, how it's the teaching elders' jobs to instruct and equip and teach the ruling elders. And so this was very empowering for me and affirming for me, but also convicting for me, both in how I fail my ruling elders, but also how I fail as a pastor, but then just such great gospel hope. And so... Yeah, good point. Okay, so day one opened up, and by the way, we're not going to tell you everything about the conference. I mean, there's amazing singing and music, good accompaniment with it. There's prayer time, there's panels. It's wonderful. But we're going to just go through the talks. So the first session was they brought out the big gun, Dr. Guy Waters, who I think he probably teaches down there. Is that right? Is he at RTS Orlando? Or I got that wrong?
No, I think he's Jackson, isn't he?
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then they brought him in. And, he has a book about how Jesus runs the church, which many churches and sessions use that as ruling elder training. And I've never used it, so I just bought some copies because I'm going to use it this next go around as part of one of the resources. So John Payne, who gives people the talk titles, he adds the word still, how Jesus still runs the church. What was significant to you about that talk, or what stood out?
You know, Dr. Waters is, one of the great minds in the denomination, and and he really looked at the struggles that we have to be good ruling elders at this time in this culture, and then the encouragements that we have to keep us going. And in some ways, I felt like he was channeling his inner Carl Truman, because he was, parsing the culture so well, and how we, what we need. And, because I actually have I took notes, and my longest notes are on this lecture of all the talks.
Wow.
And his telling us he had 4 encouragements. Look behind us, look at all the elders that have come before us, going all the way back into the Old Testament, and then look around us, realize you're not serving alone. No matter how hard it gets, you're not serving alone. And then look beyond you to the presbytery, the General Assembly, look to the broader church, and then look up, look to Jesus. I mean, he closed it out with look to Jesus. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
Wow. I think every talk ended like that, honestly. And it's just so, it's baked into guys in the GRN world that is, we are, we care about the confessions and creeds. We care about living lives pleasing to the Lord. We care about the fruit of the Spirit, but yet there's always this look to Jesus for all of that. And I love how you remembered that too, because you just brought it all back to my mind. I mean, it was the first talk, and it's hard to remember all the talks. What stuck out to me about that is he did a great job, and I guess that's why the word "still" that John, like how Jesus still runs the church, of showing, our polity goes back into the New Testament very clearly. But the same struggles they were dealing with culturally, we think our time is so different, and certainly there's new nuances and new challenges in a new day. But it's the same challenges categorically that they were dealing with, and so he set the foundation for why we have, our polity, but brought it to today as he was setting the foundation. It was great. It was great. The next talk was Rick Phillips, Dr. Richard Phillips, author of a number of books also. He's there in Greenville. And Mel Duncan is he's you there.
Yes.
He's their executive director or church administrator or whatever you want. I've often thought I want to do an episode with you, me, and Mel, because I was in your role when I was a ruling elder once upon a time as a, church administrator.
Yep.
But Dr. Phillips' talk was my favorite. And the reason for this is it's so clearly laid out what his title was. So his title was Characteristics of a Confessional, his title was simply The Confessional Ruling Elder.
Mm-hmm.
But he gave us 5 characteristics of a confessional ruling elder from, do you remember what his passage of scripture was? Was it Timothy or was it?
Yeah, it was the 2 Timothy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he based it on scripture, of course, and every talk is. But I'm going to go through these 5 characteristics because, this idea of what it means to be confessional can be confusing. We all subscribe to the Westminster Standards. Is that just our set of doctrine and then it sits on a shelf? Or how does the confession live out and live through us? How do we uphold it through our ministry? How does it serve as a, dare I say, philosophy of ministry? I mean, I remember there was a tweet a couple of years ago, it might have been Spinnenweber, honestly, who said, what is your philosophy of ministry? Question and answer, the Westminster Standards. And he was mocked and chided by a number of guys in the denomination who's like, are you trying to say that the confession has a philosophy of ministry? And what's sad about that is when guys do that in arrogance, they don't realize their own ignorance. And so this would be a great talk if you don't understand what the word confessional means or what it means to live it out. And so here were his 5 points. The confessional ruling elder knows, teaches, defends, and supports the system of doctrine found in the church's confession of faith and is well educated in it.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't just know it, you teach it, defend it, and support it as you know it. The second was the confessional ruling elder ensures there is a philosophy of ministry taking place in the church that follows as the implication of the confession of faith. And that's where he really hit on, our concept and idea of the Lord's Day as the Christian Sabbath. How the Word of God is prime, and the primacy of it as an ordinary means of grace to accomplish what its work is. Do you remember anything else on either of those 2 points?
Well, yeah, on that second one, I thought Rick's in general was the most. Also Fred Greco, but Rick was very directed at the ruling elders. And in that second point, he made a point to say, teaching elders come and go. It's your job as the ruling elder to keep the philosophy of ministry going strong and going in the right direction. Teaching elders may come for 10, 20, 30 years, but a good ruling elder could be in that church his entire life. And so it's, very much the ruling elder's job to make sure that philosophy of ministry keeps on pace through multiple teaching elders.
Man, that's a great point. And I think of even, Meadowview in the last 25 years, there's been 4 senior pastors and many assistant associates that I don't even know the number there. And, as people know, I'm leaving and going to ministry to state. And so I would have been here 7 years by that time happens. And yet my ruling elders are everything from 2 years on session to over 30.
Yeah, we still have 2 ruling elders that founded the church back in 40 years ago.
Wow. So I love the idea of how the philosophy of ministry in the church flows as an implication of the confession of faith. And that's the big confusing thing. How is this doctrine of philosophy of ministry? Well, listen to Rick's talk for that. Number 3 is the confessional ruling elder's life reflects the confession of faith and its implications of its teachings. And this is where he really hit on personal piety. Any thoughts on that one?
Other than, I was ready to crawl under the pew when he got there.
Right? We all fail. Yeah.
Yeah, that you were talking about being challenged. That was certainly a challenge, But that was something the Puritans were huge on. The importance of the piety. They focused on the pastor, the importance of the piety of the pastor. But it's true of all the leadership of the church. The importance of, if one of our members falls into deep sin, everybody will be sad, and there'll be a ripple in the church. But if myself or the pastor or one of the other ruling elders falls into some deep sin, it can end the church.
Yeah. But it also included things such as loving the body.
Yeah.
I mean, so because that is part of your piety, how you exhibit love for the flock that you're called to shepherd. So it's everything from personal devotion to Christ and study and prayer to that. Number 4, the confessional ruling elder supports and upholds the confessional pastor. And as a sub point to that, offers personal, public, ministerial, encouraging support for the pastor. And this really rung true to me as we fought and faced many battles here at Meadowview, because he really does a good job of focusing on the unique attacks and character assassinations and slander that the church members can do to the pastor by name, particularly the senior pastor. And having served as both ruling elder and teaching elder at this point, with all respect to my REs, I understand your the challenges of juggling what you guys juggle and doing what you do, but I have never seen ruling elders under the amount of attack that the teaching elder comes under by name. And that's something they need you. I needed my guys, and they're there. So I thought that was really good.
Yeah, I've heard that the most popular dinner on Sunday after church is roast pastor.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing he hit under this, I don't remember how he got there, but it was really good for Metaview, was because we're going to be doing a pastor search, and we've taken these 3 or 4 months to define, well, to understand who we are. We've done a lot of reform and a lot of change and a lot of guardrail work and a lot of foundational work, but I've really tried to help the session understand who we are and do they want that identity? Because this idea, you just search for a pastor, and he hit that. He's like, it makes him sort of nervous when it's like pastoral searches are left up to congregational pastoral search teams. And he was quick to say, that's our polity and I stand behind it. But those search teams need guidance from the session to understand, because they don't think in the categories that we think.
Yeah, I've seen many a search committee have no idea that they were calling a guy that was going to transform the way they were doing church.
Right.
Because they didn't know the questions to ask.
They didn't know. Right. They don't have our categories often, the way we think through them. He used the example a couple of times. They call somebody who they like their preaching, is good looking, and has an attractive wife.
Yes.
Without thinking there's actually implications to their philosophy of ministry and how it fits with the church's philosophy of ministry.
Yep.
Yeah. The last point was the confessional ruling elder aims for the next generation. And if I remember right, that was of pastors and elders. So it's leadership development. Mm-hmm. And your church, by the way, does a great job of this. We've, for over a year, tried to do an episode on your internship program, and I know we'll get to that. But why don't you give a plug for that, or just why don't you give some of the importance or why you've placed a high degree of importance on training up the next generation of TEs and REs?
Yeah, so we get the guys that are fresh out of seminary and aren't and need the practical experience before, they're guys graduating from seminary, never been to a session meeting. And if they went straight into the pastorate, they could be the moderator of the first session meeting they ever attend, which is crazy.
Wow.
So,
wow. You're right.
Because especially in a smaller church, guys get called straight out of seminary to be the solo pastor at a small church, and then they're moderating their first session meeting. So we want to bring them in, let them experience everything that we do in ministry. We're not a heavily program-driven church, so we get them. Show them the whole Sunday. They experience our entire Sunday school program, what we're doing with the little kids, middle kids, older kids, the adult program. They attend the men's Bible study. They go on visitations with the pastor. They preach. We sit and analyze their preaching. I don't know about you. At seminary, I did two sermons in class where where I got critiqued, and this was good and that was bad, and so, we sit down with the young guys and go through each sermon that they preach and help them think through what could be better.
I love, and we're, like I said, we'll do a whole episode. We'll bring one of your interns on. I want to highlight that. What I love about this part of the talk and what you're sharing is, once again, I've already said it, like it's the teaching elders' job to help the ruling elders, disciple the ruling elders, teaching ruling elders. The ruling elders have a responsibility to train up the next generation of pastors in the way you're doing. And I think typically like that's left to the seminaries, and then here, like you said, here you get this, one young whippersnapper in some cases leading, seasoned ruling elders, and they've never done that. And so I love that. I love that you have that.
One of the things on mentoring that I do is when I'm selecting books for our men's study, one of the main things in my head is, what do I want the guys who I'm going to serve with as ruling elders later what do I want them to have read?
That's good. That's really good. So there was a women's breakout also, encouragement for elders' wives. And we were not a part of that, by Miss Carrie Anderson. Then there was a lunch break, and then we came back to Dr. David Garner from Westminster, Philly. And wow, what a What an important talk. What an important talk that's often neglected. The ruling elder and godly leadership in the home. Any takeaways from that?
The two big points that stood out to me were integrity and hospitality.
Hmm.
He hit both of those. Um, Under integrity, let's see, I actually did have a couple of notes there. He talked about moral integrity, theological integrity, um, and station integrity, where he meant we need to be content with where God has placed us.
Oh, that's good.
And
Yeah.
I thought that was very good.
Yeah. He I don't know if he's on Twitter. I've never seen him on Twitter, but he said a number of things that were so tweetable or postable. So I shared this comment, which was just phenomenal. He said, "You will never be at the session table what you're not already at the dinner table." And the point is, if you're not leading your home as a loving husband and loving father, and leading them, you're not going to be able to do that on the session, and that is scripture, manages their household well, but it's more than like administrative management. It's relational. It's shepherding of those in your home. And I was like, wow, that was profound,
Yeah, but remember he said, if you're thinking about a guy for elder or deacon, look at how he talks to his wife.
Yes. Did he say that, or did John Payne say it?
Uh-oh.
I guess he said it.
I don't know.
Yeah, there was a lot of overlap, but but yes, yeah. So then Mel Duncan gave a talk, 5 key lessons for ruling elders, and then he hosted a panel that was all included under one heading there. What were do you have any remembrances or thoughts of Mel's talk?
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to Mel's talk. As you know, I was on the panel.
Yes.
And so I'm sitting there just thinking about the panel. I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So Mel, Mel always does a good job. He spoke 2 years ago maybe 3 now at
Briarwood.
GRN on the ruling elder.
Yeah. The panel. So what was the most interesting or profound question you answered on the panel?
Oh. Well, the one that I thought, I needed to have answered better. Mel asked me about, especially since I'm also on staff. He asked, how do you break up?
Oh, that was so good.
The family life and church life and elder life and I really was answering it as an empty nester who's been a part of a particular church for 40 years.
Mm.
And my life is really wrapped up in that church now, and as is my wife's. And so, we are devoted to that church, much like, it being our family. But it wasn't the same when I was a computer programmer with 4 little kids, right? And, knowing that there were times where I was away from them, away from the kids because of evening meetings or for pastoral calls or whatever. And it's not easy finding that proper balance of when to be pastoring your family, when to be pastoring the church. There were times when I thought, when I was working a secular job, my boss is going to fire me. But because things would come up in the middle of the day that I just had to handle as a ruling elder.
Yeah.
And but was able to somehow keep it all together.
I love your answer, because it's coming back to me now when you said, I forgot what the anecdote was, but you said, so what is that? Is that my ruling elder hat? Is that my staff hat? Is that I'm a part of this church hat? And that resonated with me, because when you love the church and when your family loves the church, it's, ministry is no longer a job. So that resonated with me. And I remember exactly what you're saying. I was running businesses as a ruling elder, and that was different than when I was on staff in your position as a ruling elder. And you're juggling a lot, and your family needs you, and your church needs you, and your pastor needs you, and how all that works. In some sense, when you come on staff, it gets a little easier because you can do that during the day.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then I really, he asked about our wives, about the ruling elder's wife, and I mentioned that I said that Kathy, if she were here, she would tell you that her number one job is, in her mind, is to support me. And I didn't go on to say she has plenty of her own ministry in the church. She, sometimes is leading the women's Bible study. She teaches in the kids' Sunday school program. Although she's a grandmother now, she's still working on the nursery committee. She has her own ministry. But she would drop all of that if she thought I needed more time, if she needed to support me. She sees me and supporting me as her number one ministry.
Yeah, it's not a dismissive statement. It's really a beautiful statement. So like when Susan, my wife, I mean, my kids are all in high school now, but when they were younger and I was a ruling elder before I was a teaching elder, and I had to go to a night meeting to deal with a discipline case or to help the senior pastor, she understood that that's just not her getting left holding the bag in the home. That's her ministry to the church and to the family to make that easy for me. And I've always been grateful to my wife, Susan, for how she never made me feel guilty about what I needed to be doing and when I needed to be doing it. But that doesn't mean you take advantage of it,
Right. No, she, no, yeah, it dittos all those times that she put the kids in bed without me.
Yeah.
And she saw that not just as ministry to our family, but ministry to the church. She was
Yes.
freeing me up to do things that needed to be done in the church, and therefore she was serving the church by serving me.
Amen. So I understood that. I appreciate the clarification too. We do have to move on, and so sorry, Mel. We gave your 5 key lessons for ruling elders. We kind of brushed over and ended up talking. But so listen to that, and then Mel asks the best questions. So I think he really ran that panel well. There was 5.
He really did.
5 of you ruling elders on that, and the panels are always so interesting. We went to dinner, and they made sure we all came back from dinner by having Fred Greco be the after dinner speaker, because it's very easy to leave a conference, go out for dinner, and think, I'm not coming back. But everybody came back. And Fred Greco's talk, John Payne gave him the title, Ruling Elder Strong, How to Impact the PCA as a Ruling Elder. And he really just set out to rally the troops, and not in a factious way but that's we are churchmen, we are soldiers in the army of God, and he made us excited about our calling to serve the larger church. And I think he highlighted, because his focus was how to engage ruling elders beyond the local church, there could be an idea that he's trying to say your responsibility is more to the bigger church, the Presbyterian, and he was very careful to say, no, there's other talks for those other responsibilities. But his talk was about, impacting beyond the local church. And he just really set out the importance and the need for all churchmen. Again, it was to ruling elders, but I took it to heart for me of going to General Assembly and voting in General Assembly. And I think guys in confessional circles often think there's general assemblies to take it, lay back because there's no controversial thing on up for vote. And Fred, held out, well, no, there's nominating committee votes, and there's all kinds of important things that we are responsible for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then he got all Baptist on us. Had us raise our hand. How many have registered for GA? We had to raise our hand, and then he said, "Okay, all the rest of you go register right now."
That's so funny. And again, it was directed at ruling elders, but because he did the Baptist thing, which I like how you said that, like I'm a teacher, but I raised my hand. I don't want to be somebody not raising my hand, but I am registered, obviously. Still funny. Good old Fred brought the energy you'd expect. The next day, John Payne's talk was shepherding those for whom Christ died. And this is why I remember every speaker sort of referenced, because they didn't want it to be like their talk was not talking about the main call of the ruling elder, which is to shepherd. So they'd always say that talk is coming later, So this conference really worked together. The talks, it's almost like however many talks this is one talk. With different chapters, perhaps.
Yeah.
What are some thoughts on John's talk?
Well, he started with you got to know and love the good shepherd. He started right off on that one. To be a good shepherd, you got to, to be a good sub shepherd. I forgot what the exact language he used, but under shepherd. To be a good under shepherd, you have to know and love the chief shepherd. You got to know and love the good shepherd, and it starts there. So I thought that was an excellent way to start. And then he said, the next thing is you got to know the flock. You got to really actually know them, and not just know the business of Metaview or All Saints. You got to actually know the people. My pastor says the two most important books for the pastor are the Bible and the church directory. And so John was really hitting on that. And then he talked about feeding and protecting the flock. Those are our two. That's what a shepherd does. He feeds and protects.
I'm so glad you took good notes. What I told John afterwards is what I always appreciate about hearing him speak is I'm always convicted when he speaks, and I'm always pointed to the gospel when he speaks. And so, like the high calling and the gravity, and maybe even how I'm falling short in the picture he's painting, always points me to Christ. I get both, which is what I want. Honestly, I want to be convicted where I need to be convicted, and then see how I'm still loved by Christ and empowered by Christ. So John's talk was great, shepherding those for whom Christ died, and the last thing was a GRN council panel, and they had us on the general council. So I'm on the general council, and what that means, because sometimes people say, well, you're on the GRN, right? And I'm like, well, as a general council member, I make no decisions. I'm not setting the direction. I'm just promoting the 7 distinctives of the GRN, which are 7 couplets. You can see them on the website, to help cultivate healthy Reformed churches in the PCA, and I do that by hosting podcasts. That's what I do. But literally 5 minutes before this panel I was asked to be on. So I don't know who wasn't able to be on that they said, "Hey George, will you do this?" But I was honored to be up there with friends and brothers in Christ. And
so, what about you? What was the most significant question that you remember answering?
So, thanks for asking. There was 2. How you identify younger men in the church who you see as future elders, and I thought the answers on that question were really helpful, because typically there was a lot of answers that supported one another. Typically, you see a guy and you wait for them to be ruling elder material before you start discipling them to be a ruling elder. And I think what we heard was, no, you're identifying what the Lord is doing in younger men, and you're discipling them all along the way, which may be years in advance, how you're pouring into these guys. That one, and then the last question that Jason Halopoulos asked was just phenomenal, which was, he said, I don't know a ruling elder who doesn't believe they're falling short in some way. And how do you counsel them? How do you teach them? How do you point them to Christ in that? And I just loved hearing every one of the answers. And I deal with that. My ruling elders are so involved. They do everything you would think a ruling elder would do. They teach, they pray with, they deal with shepherding issues, they deal with discipline cases. They are not just looking to us pastors to do, the teaching elders to do that. And then they're also involved at Presbyterian General Assembly. We also send more usually than are allowed. But I'm always having to remind them they're not Jesus Christ, because I think what I said was, look, we're gonna fail people, and we ought to own that. But a lot of times people are just upset because we didn't meet their expectations, and they don't know you can't be in, 10 places at once. And we have to remember, like, yeah, we can be compassionate in those moments, but we're not Jesus Christ. We can't fix everybody's problems. And it can be idolatrous if we think we're supposed to. But all we do is move toward people in love. And the Lord is not displeased with us. I mean, if you're sinning, of course but like, can you feel his smile as he says to his son, this is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased? Well, if you're in Christ and serving him by faith in the power of the Spirit, he's pleased with you, So that was some of my encouragement in that question. Anything stood out to you on any of that panel, or?
Well, one thing that had nothing actually to do with the answers, sadly, but it seemed like most of you guys represented fairly large churches. We're the 130, 150 at worship, and I got the feeling like every one of your churches were bigger than my church. I could be wrong. I mean,
Yeah,
just the way. I don't think it was on purpose. I think it's just the way it fell out.
I think there were two people that were represented as churches, maybe your size. Yeah.
Okay. I was surprised at how small some of the bigger churches' sessions were.
Ah, interesting.
We're as small as we've ever been, and we have 5 ruling elders. And we have, 65, 75 households. So that gives us 12 to 13 households per elder. And I was thinking, some of these guys, they must have, 25 households per ruling elder. I don't know how you keep up with that many people. Now, of course, they also have staff that we don't have at the bigger churches that can take on some of the more difficult pastoral cases.
It's funny you're saying that. How many ruling elders did you say you had?
We have 5.
5. Okay, so we are just over 300 members, and we have 10.
So we're fairly close.
Yeah, I think so. But we do have 3 pastors on staff, and I think we all want and are trying to get younger ruling elders. I'm not talking about guys in their 20s, but I mean, like we're aging. We're an aging session, and so we're looking at how we raise up some of the guys in their mid to upper 30s and 40s to be the next generation. And I think in a church like us, there's a reticence to, well, you have to be here for so long and everybody has to know you, and it just creates this really big barrier about getting the younger guys in. But we're trying to even have more. I think what I noticed was there was like an inverse relationship to the size of the church and the length of the session meeting also. I don't know if you noticed that. Like the smaller the church, the longer the session meetings it seemed like. And, the largest churches are like, they're meeting for like an hour and a half,
Right.
And I think maybe some of that is they're trusting their committees more, and they have a lot of staff that are doing a lot of things. So that'll be interesting to dig into that a little more. But all in all, I think we went through it. Great bookstore, great gifts. Again, we got the mug, we got some books, and good fellowship. And what I loved, again, I like the new location because it opened up this conference to a whole new group of people, and yet still engaged. Many of the longtime GRN supporters are aligned kind of people, but they did it through live stream, and they'll do it through the videos, and maybe that's a great model for it. Any final words there, Rick?
No, go to GRN next year.
Yes, we don't know where it is. I guess we could promote. The GRN dinner, which is the largest event they do. Last year they had over 1,000. Might be the largest GA thing besides the assembly. Is Wednesday night. I also know there's some other dinners that night that are good. And so if you can't make the GRN, it's not like
We've already got our tickets.
Yes.
All Saints already has its tickets for GRN dinner.
There you go. And there's a more event that we should be hearing more about soon. More ruling elders in the PCA, and that's usually that night, Wednesday night after the GRN dinner or after any dinners. And so there is going to be sort of this social event afterwards. We do hope to see people at General Assembly, and we hope you'll be there for the votes, not just overtures, and there's a lot of overtures, and there's a lot of odd overtures. I guess I can safely say, but be there for the other votes, because there's important things, Yeah. Well, I'm Pastor George, signing off. You're going to hear a brief promotion for Birmingham Theological Seminary. They help support this podcast program, and they have so many good, amazing things going on at BTS. They have record enrollment. They have programs for ruling elders. They have advanced degrees for teaching elders, and just ways they can help the church. And so I love what they're doing with the Reader Center and how that seminary is really sort of growing. Thanks for watching. Oh, last thing is all the Gospel Reformation Network Conference videos are on the YouTube page. They're under live stream or live, so there might be in 3-hour chunks. You may have to search through them, but I know they're breaking those up, and there'll be individual videos. And consider watching 1 or 2 with your session. That might be a good evening with the session. Thanks for being on. We will have you on for your internship program coming up. Thank you.
Yeah, good talking with you.
The training of the next generation of pastoral leaders is of vital importance. The problem is that seminary is oftentimes incredibly expensive. You have to uproot your family, you have to go to another place where you're not plugged into a local church. What BTS does is it provides a way for people to continue in their hometown, continue in their present ministry, gain the tools that they need for pastoral leadership, be equipped for the work of the ministry for the long haul, and do it inexpensively but substantively. I love that about Birmingham Theological Seminary.